Tell me about a time you worked in an Agile team introduction. This is a common behavioral interview question for software developers, backend developers, full-stack developers, senior developers, and team leads. Interviewers ask this question to understand how you work in sprints, how you participate in daily stand-ups, how you estimate and break down work, how you collaborate with developers, QA, product owners, and Scrum masters, how you handle changing requirements, how you communicate blockers, how you contribute to sprint goals, how you improve through retrospectives. This question is especially important for sick Java developers, sick backend developers, Spring Boot developers, sick full-stack developers, sick junior software developers, sick senior software developers, sick team leads, sick Scrum teams, Agile teams. The best way to answer this question is by using the STAR method. STAR means S, situation, explain the background. T, task, explain your responsibility. A, action, explain what you personally did. R, result, explain the final outcome. A good interview answer usually spends 10% situation, 10% task, 60% action, 20% result. The most important part is the action section because interviewers want to understand how you contributed to Agile ceremonies, collaboration, delivery, and continuous improvement. Question: tell me about a time you worked in an Agile team. Example 1. Delivering a sprint feature with developers, QA, and product owner situation. In one project, our Agile team was building a new customer search feature. The feature required backend API changes, front-end integration, QA testing, and product owner acceptance. Task: I was responsible for implementing the backend API and collaborating with the team to deliver the feature within the sprint. Action: during sprint planning, I helped break the user story into smaller technical tasks. The tasks included API design, request DTO, response DTO, validation rules, database query, pagination, sorting, error handling, unit tests, integration tests. During backlog refinement, I asked the product owner clarifying questions about filters, empty results, sorting behavior, and access rules. In daily stand-ups, I gave clear updates on what I completed yesterday, what I plan to work on today, whether I had any blockers. When the front-end developer needed sample responses, I shared example JSON so they could start integration early. I also worked with QA to define test scenarios for valid search, invalid filters, pagination limits, unauthorized access, and empty results. When QA found one issue with invalid sorting, I reproduced it locally, fixed the validation, and added a regression test. Result: the feature was completed within the sprint. QA testing was smoother because test scenarios were discussed early. The product owner accepted the story during the sprint demo. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows: check, Agile sprint delivery, collaboration with product owner, developer and QA teamwork, API design, daily stand-up communication, sprint demo success. Example 2. Handling changing requirements during a sprint situation. In one sprint, we were working on a user profile update feature. Halfway through the sprint, the product owner clarified that one field should be editable only by admin users, not normal users. Task: I needed to adjust the backend implementation without causing major delay to the sprint goal. Action: I first discussed the change with the product owner to understand the business reason. Then I reviewed the current implementation and identified the impact. The change affected request validation, authorization rules, service layer logic, error response, QA test cases, front-end behavior. I explained the impact during stand-up and updated the task estimate with the team. I added backend authorization so normal users could not update the restricted field, even if they called the API directly. I also updated tests for C, admin user update, C, normal user blocked, C, missing token, C, invalid token, C, unchanged profile fields. I worked with QA to update test cases and with the front-end developer to adjust the UI behavior. Result: the team handled the requirement change without losing control of the sprint. The feature was delivered with the correct business rule. The product owner appreciated that we clarified the impact before making the change. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows adapting to change, impact analysis, agile communication, backend security, QA front-end collaboration, sprint goal focus. Example 3. Raising a blocker early in daily stand-up situation. In one sprint, I was working on a backend integration with another internal service. My task depended on a test endpoint from another team, but the endpoint was not available in the lower environment. Task. I needed to communicate the blocker early, so the sprint goal was not affected. Action. During daily stand-up, I clearly explained the blocker. I said what I was working on, what was blocked, who I needed help from, what I could continue working on in the meantime. Instead of waiting, I contacted the other team and confirmed when the endpoint would be available. To keep my work moving, I created a mock response and continued implementing the client integration, validation, error handling, and unit tests. I also documented the expected API contract. Once the lower environment endpoint became available, I tested the real integration and fixed one response field mismatch. Result. The blocker did not stop the sprint progress. Because I raised it early, the Scrum Master and team had visibility. The integration was completed before the sprint ended. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows clear stand-up communication. Check. Blocker management, proactive action, integration planning, mock-based progress, team visibility. Example 4. Participating in backlog refinement situation. In one Agile team, some stories entered sprint planning with unclear requirements. This caused rework during development and confusion during QA testing. Task. I wanted to help improve backlog refinement so stories were clearer before they entered the sprint. Action. During refinement sessions, I started asking more specific questions. For each story, I checked UXC, business goal, user workflow, acceptance criteria, required fields, optional fields, validation rules, authorization rules, error scenarios, dependencies, test data needs. For backend stories, I also asked about check, API request format, API response format, database changes, downstream service dependencies, audit logging, performance expectations. If something was unclear, I helped the product owner update the story. I also worked with QA to make sure test scenarios were clear before development started. Result. Stories became better prepared before sprint planning. The team had fewer mid-sprint requirement surprises. QA testing became smoother because acceptance criteria were clearer. Why this answer works. This answer is good because it shows check, backlog refinement participation, check, requirement clarification, agile maturity, check, product owner collaboration, check, QA alignment, reducing rework. Example 5. Improving sprint retrospective action items situation. In one Agile team, we noticed that sprint retrospectives identified good problems, but action items were sometimes too general. For example, we would say, improve communication, but there was no clear follow-up. Task. I wanted to help make retrospectives more useful and improve the team's process. Action. During one retrospective, I suggested making action items more specific and measurable. Instead of saying, improve communication, we changed it to, developers will add API sample request and response JSON to backend stories before QA testing starts. We identified recurring sprint issues such as unclear acceptance criteria, late QA test scenario discussion, integration blockers, pull requests submitted too late, missing regression tests, unclear deployment notes. Then we created practical action items. Examples. Q. Add acceptance criteria checklist during refinement. Q. Share API examples early. Q. Raise blockers within 1 day. Q. Submit PRs earlier in the sprint. Q. Add regression tests for bug fixes. Q. Include deployment notes in release tickets. Result: retrospectives became more useful. The team started completing action items instead of only discussing problems. Sprint execution improved because recurring issues were addressed with specific process changes. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows continuous improvement, retrospective participation, process ownership, practical action items, team maturity, agile mindset. Example 6. Collaborating during sprint planning and estimation situation. In one sprint planning session, the team needed to estimate a story for a new report feature. The story looked simple at first, but it had hidden complexity around data calculation and date filtering. Task: I helped the team analyze the story properly before committing to the sprint. Action: during planning, I asked questions about report calculation rules, date range behavior, time zone expectations, data volume, database query complexity, export requirement, user roles, QA test scenarios. After discussion, we realized the story was larger than expected. I suggested splitting it into smaller stories. Check. Backend calculation API. Check. UI display. Check. Export functionality. Check. QA validation with business test data. For the first sprint, we committed only to the backend API and UI display. The export functionality was moved to a later sprint. Result: the team made a more realistic sprint commitment. We avoided overcommitting and reduced the risk of incomplete work. The first part was delivered successfully, and the remaining work was planned properly. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows sprint planning participation, sprint estimation thinking, hidden complexity identification, sprint story splitting, scope control, team delivery focus. Example 7. Supporting QA and product owner during sprint demo situation. At the end of one sprint, we completed a new admin configuration feature. The product owner wanted to see the main flow before accepting the story. Task: I helped prepare and support the sprint demo so the business team could clearly understand the feature. Action: before the demo, I tested the feature with QA and confirmed the main scenarios. The scenarios included: yes, successful admin update, validation error, unauthorized user blocked, audit log created, empty input handling, error response behavior. During the demo, I explained the backend behavior in simple terms. For example, instead of saying service layer authorization, I said, even if someone tries to call the API directly, the backend checks whether they have admin permission. The product owner asked for one validation message to be clearer. I updated the message and coordinated with QA to retest it. Result: the product owner accepted the story. The demo helped catch a small usability improvement before release. The team had better confidence that the feature matched business expectations. Why this answer works? This answer is strong because it shows sprint demo participation, QA collaboration, product owner communication, business-friendly explanation, security awareness, fast feedback handling. Example 8. Helping the team meet sprint goal situation. In one sprint, one teammate was blocked on a Kafka consumer task. The task was important for the sprint goal because other work depended on event processing. Task: I wanted to help unblock the teammate so the team could meet the sprint goal. Action: I first asked the teammate where they were stuck. They were unsure about retry handling, duplicate message handling, and dead letter queue behavior. I helped them break the task into smaller steps. We reviewed event payload, consumer logic, item potency, retry rules, DLQ behavior, logging, test scenarios. We paired on the first implementation and wrote tests for successful message processing, successful duplicate message, successful invalid payload, successful downstream failure, successful retry scenario, successful DLQ scenario. I also updated the team during standup so everyone understood the progress. Result: The teammate completed the Kafka consumer. The sprint goal was met. The teammate gained confidence with event-driven development, and the team had better test coverage. Why this answer works? This answer is good because it shows cake team-first mindset, helping teammate, sprint goal ownership, Kafka collaboration, agile teamwork, knowledge sharing. Best short answer version. If you need a short interview answer, you can say, in one agile team, we were building a customer search feature during a sprint. The feature required backend API changes, front-end integration, QA testing, and product owner acceptance. I was responsible for implementing the backend API, but I also collaborated closely with the team throughout the sprint. During refinement, I asked clarifying questions about filters, pagination, sorting, validation, and access rules. During planning, I helped break the work into smaller technical tasks. In daily stand-ups, I shared progress and raised blockers early. I also shared sample JSON responses with the front-end developer and worked with QA to define test scenarios for valid searches, invalid filters, pagination limits, unauthorized access, and empty results. When QA found an issue with invalid sorting, I fixed it and added a regression test. At the sprint demo, the product owner accepted the story. As a result, the feature was delivered within the sprint, QA testing was smoother, and the team met the sprint goal. Common mistakes to avoid. 1. Saying only, I attended stand-ups. Bad answer. I worked in Agile and attended daily stand-ups. Better answer. Explain how you contributed to planning, refinement, stand-ups, QA testing, demos, and retrospectives. 2. Not mentioning collaboration. Bad answer. I completed my development tasks. Better answer. I collaborated with QA, front-end developers, product owner, and Scrum Master to deliver the sprint goal. 3. Ignoring blockers. Bad answer. I waited until the dependency was ready. Better answer. I raised the blocker early and used mock data to continue progress. 4. No sprint result. Bad answer. We followed Agile process. Better answer. The feature was delivered within the sprint and accepted by the product owner. 5. Using Agile buzzwords only. Bad answer. We did Scrum, stand-ups, retrospectives, and story points. Better answer. Explain what you actually did in those ceremonies and how it helped delivery. Best practices for answering this question. Check, use the STAR method. Mention the Agile ceremony only if you explain your contribution. Talk about sprint planning. Talk about backlog refinement. Talk about daily stand-ups. Mention blockers and communication. Mention collaboration with QA and product owner. Mention sprint demo if relevant. Retrospective improvement. End with sprint outcome. What interviewers are looking for. Interviewers want to see whether you can click, work well in Scrum or Agile teams, communicate daily progress clearly, raise blockers early, collaborate with QA and product owners, estimate and break down work, adapt to changing requirements, contribute to sprint goals, improve team process, deliver working software incrementally. For senior roles, they also want to see capital leadership, story refinement ownership, sprint risk management, mentoring teammates, retrospective action ownership, cross-functional collaboration, continuous improvement mindset. Strong words to use in your answer. You can use words like collaborated, refined, estimated, prioritized, aligned, clarified, raised blockers, coordinated, delivered, demonstrated, improved, adapted, supported sprint goal. Example, I contributed to the Agile team by helping refine the story, breaking the work into technical tasks, raising blockers early, collaborating with QA on test scenarios, and supporting the sprint demo for product owner acceptance. Good Agile team topics you can use. Depending on your experience, you can talk about sprint planning, backlog refinement, daily stand-up, story estimation, breaking down stories, working with product owner, working with QA, handling changing requirements, raising blockers early, sprint demo, Retrospective improvements, helping meet sprint goal. Defect triage during sprint. Readiness? Check. Story splitting? Check. Acceptance criteria clarification? Check. Cross-functional collaboration. Final summary. Tell me about a time you worked in an Agile team is an important interview question because most software teams deliver work through Agile or Scrum. The best answer should include Kirk, what project or sprint you worked on. Kirk, your responsibility. Kirk, how you participated in refinement. Kirk, how you helped with planning. Kirk, how you communicated in stand-ups. Kirk, how you handled blockers. Kirk, how you collaborated with QA and product owner. Kirk, how you supported the sprint goal. Good examples include, delivering a sprint feature, handling changing requirements, raising blockers early, improving backlog refinement, retrospective action items, sprint planning and estimation, sprint demo support, helping team meet sprint goal. The strongest answers show collaboration, communication, adaptability, ownership, and continuous improvement.